Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for coming and bringing yourself here today to talk to me. My name is Chelsea Smith. I am a learning and development specialist here at Action Benefits. And today we are here to learn about how to create some educational marketing content and promote it with ease using social media. And to do this, we are going to review some of the details of Cobra that we would need in order to create that educational content. So today's going to be kind of like a two-sided webinar. Half of it will be some marketing tips, and some of it will be a review of Cobra. So hopefully that covers what you are looking for today. Well, it will. I did it. So again, thank you for coming. And let's jump right in because we've got a lot to cover. And if you've been with me before in a webinar, you know I love to talk. So I tend to take up the whole hour. So I don't want to go over. So let's go ahead and get started today. I am flying solo today. So if you do put a question in the chat, obviously feel free to do so. Love it. Just know that because I'm alone, there will not be someone immediately answering your questions as you ask them. So just be patient with me as I get a moment to see your questions and have a moment to pause and answer them. Okay, so no co-pilot today, just all Chelsea all the time. Lucky you, huh? All right, so let's go over what we are looking to accomplish for today. So our outcomes, hopefully by the end of this session, you should be able to choose social media topics that best work for your business. You should be able to describe the rules surrounding Cobra and how they affect both the employers and the employees. You can create social media posts that are easily tweaked to reach multiple markets. And finally, you can identify the ways to cross-promote social media content to best cover the targeted audience. So like I said, a lot of ground to cover today, so I want to hit the ground running. So from the beginning to end, just so you get kind of like an idea of what we are going to map out today, is in the beginning of the presentation, we're going to kind of brainstorm and think about what kind of content we would make. I'm going to walk you through the process of how I would decide on a social media topic as a marketer myself, then choosing the topic that best fits your audience, and then fleshing out how that content can be created, and then posting that content in a way that maximizes it. So getting the most bang for your buck with content, because you can create the best social media content in the world. That doesn't necessarily mean anyone's going to see it if you don't put it out there in a way where people can find it, right? So here, if we take a look at this circle graph here, we can see how this content creation kind of goes in a circle, right? There is no point ever in a social media marketing journey where you can just wipe your hands and say, whew, job well done. I will never have to look at my social media pages again. They're done. I've finished them. We're not in that kind of industry, are we? So we still, to be able to continue to reap the benefits of social media marketing, it's something you have to keep up at. It doesn't mean you have to work 24/7 on this. But it is something that does need attention, like a plant that you need to keep growing over time. But if you're smart about it, you should be able to, at the very least, spread the same topic over multiple social media platforms, if not multiple markets. Then once you have a foundation of content going, you can use that to build off the interest displayed by your audience, or take it in a totally different direction if that marketing material you created didn't give you the boost you were looking for, and then rinsing that process and repeating, right? Because there is a little bit of guess and check to social media marketing, right? There's none of us have a crystal ball. We're not going to know 100% for sure what's popular and what's not, but we do have some tools at our disposal to help us make an educated guess. So moving right along, we can go ahead and pick a topic first. This might remind you a little bit of writing an essay in high school, but it in a lot of ways is kind of similar to that. And before I start talking, I want to make sure that I check the chat to make sure there's no questions before I continue, and it looks like we are good. Okay, so when you consider your topic for your social media posts, there are 4 different categories. Maybe you have, and maybe you haven't seen these categories before from our previous webinars on social media marketing. about what a good topic should be able to do. And if you haven't watched that yet, I highly recommend it. The host is really cool. Go and check it out on YouTube or Insurability. And there are 4 different types of content. You can either engage with your audience at a personal level or a community level. You can engage with them as a business partner or at a business level, at an educational level, or at a thought-provoking level. And so for the purposes of today, we're going to focus on the educational portion of these social media posts and take more of a deeper dive into how those posts are born, right? So now that we've narrowed down a content category, let's take a peek at some of the possible content ideas for this category. So I'm not saying the educational content category is a better category, but it is just the one we're going to focus on for today. I think it's a kind of an easy one to get started with, I feel, if you have that knowledge base to begin with. And if you don't, it's a great way to build that knowledge base as well. So either way, I think it can be a good starting point, good jumping off point for creating a social media brand for your business and for yourself. So when you look for a topic, what you will want to do is to consider what markets that you're serving and what is a hot topic within those markets, and then how you can use those topics to call your leads or clients to action. That is, to get them to come to you and ask for you to serve them. If you only serve one market, then you will have kind of an easier time with this portion than those who might serve more than one market. It is perfectly fine if you are one of those one market agents to direct yourself obviously only to that one market, or if you're a multiple market person, it is fine to focus on one market, right? We know that. Just so long as those posts are clear on what they're advertising for, what that target is, and that targeting process is mindful, right? If you are actively choosing to target Medicare, make sure your social media posts reflect that you are actively targeting Medicare, right? You don't want to be looking to expand your Medicare book of business and blasting out tons of content on group. That's not going to help you achieve your goal, right? So make sure that those things are focused, targeted, and intentional. If you want a more balanced book of business, then make sure you're targeting your markets equally or as equally as you can. Sometimes they're going to be naturally a little imbalanced, and that's okay. Just being as long as you're mindful of what you're doing. If you want to hone in under 65, hone in under 65. Or spread yourself evenly. Let that speak for itself when you're creating your social media posts. So I did some of the groundwork for you already. This is an exercise I love to do with myself whenever I am trying to think of new ideas for social media posts. I sat down at my desk, I set a timer on my phone for 2 minutes, and I listed as many things as possible that I knew that I could write a paragraph about in healthcare. And here's what I came up with. Okay. So I went a little crazy, and this list is everywhere, right? This is literally any and everything that I could think of that I could write a paragraph about that had anything to do with healthcare at all. That's okay. That's actually a good thing, right? Because we can keep going back to this list later and adding on to it as things pop into our head, as we're having shower thoughts, just keep throwing them onto that list. And then whenever you're hitting a writer's block, you can head back over to this list again. But just about all of these things could work in the right time, in the right place, in the right space, right? But let's say I'm an agent that works in the group space, under 65 space, and Medicare space. Unless there's something really hard hitting going down in a particular space that is hotter than hot, and you really want to cover that topic. Or again, if you're marketing with intention and you're choosing to grow one section of your business, you're not going to be wanting to waste your time on marketing to only 1/3 of your business. You're going to want to pick something that you can kind of have as like your meat to your meal, and then change the side dishes up to best meet whatever market you are going for. No pun intended. Actually, no pun intended. So for the purposes of our example, let's try to whittle down this list a little bit and only focus on those items that apply to all 3 markets. So again, did a little bit more of the legwork for you. So I crossed out anything that doesn't really have to do with all 3 markets. So this list should be a bit more manageable for us, right? So of these topics, this is the part where we're going to have to pull in some help, right? From an outside source. I don't know. I work, I market every day for my job, right? But I could not tell you off the top of my head which of these topics are going to work the best in this particular market on this particular day, September 21st. Is it 21st? September 21st, 2020. I don't know, right? I can't tell you exactly what topic is going to be a rising star, which one's a total dud. It's those things change sometimes hourly, right? So in comes Google Trends, right? Oh, this thing is so cool. I fairly recently learned about this, and I think it's so interesting as a data nerd. So Google nowadays, on the website that I have put on the screen, will just provide you with the ingredients to social media treats, right? So if you just type in Google Trends on Google, the first website that comes up is this one that you have a picture of kind of on your screen here. And when you click on it, you'll get something like this picture. And it will work in one of two ways. You can either type in the topic you are thinking of and see if that topic is popular or not, or you can click on see what's trending now and see what is popular on Google right now, like in the whole of Google. Since we're trying to get attention for health insurance business, I don't think you want to see what's most popular in the entirety of Google, because you're going to get, at least when I was clicking on this, I got a lot of Taylor Swift stuff. And while sure, that's probably interesting for some of us, not really what we're looking for right now, right? So I would just stick on typing in topics and seeing how they do in comparison to seeing what's trending now. I don't check it as religiously as I used to. I have not seen that many health insurance topics popping up on the entirety of the world of Google for people to be looking at. And if you find that awesome, write about it, obviously. But up until this point, I have not really seen that trending now has not been that helpful for me. It's been much more helpful to work the other direction and look at look at things to talk about, and then seeing how popular that topic is in comparison to the other way around. Okay. So here's a few screenshots of some of those terms that I brainstormed. I just picked a couple off the list and threw them into Google Trends. Okay. So this is a lot. So let me take a second to break down what we're looking at here. Okay. So from left to right, we can see how much this term has been typed into Google based on the parameters that we set up in this middle-ish top area here. So as you can see in the United States in the past 5 years, this is the way that the word formularies, as you can see up here, has changed over time, right? So I started July 8th, 2018 over here and went all the way to the middle of the year-ish of 2023. So you can see that this seems to trend around 25 to 50 searches a week, with some weeks being a little higher, but for the most part, it stays about the same, right? So most of the settings in those drop-down menus are kind of self-explanatory, but I'd like to encourage you, excuse me, to think about the longevity of the post you'd like to create when deciding on what to set as a time span, right? So not much really changes in the ways of formularies as a whole. Obviously, as we know, formularies in detail can change, but what a formulary is on a foundational level is not going to change all that much, right? So if I wanted to make the beginnings of my content, formularies might be a okay option, but if you are looking to do something like the unwinding, you're going to want to look for search terms with a shorter time span and a sharper rise in that line graph, right? Because you're looking to gather attention quickly over a short period of time, because the unwinding is not going to last forever. 10 years from now, no one is going to be Googling the unwinding unless, well, hopefully not, knock on wood, but that's not going to be a popular topic in 10 years. Where formularies, explaining what a formulary is, that's probably not going to change. So it might be a good idea to keep something like that on your page for a long period of time, right? So again, no matter how lovely that content is going to be, if it's something that's going to expire or it's something that's not going to be there long-term, it might not be a good idea to spend time writing on it, again, unless you're doing that intentional targeting of that audience. So back to the task. As you can see, we have formularies first, and this one is okay. This term did okay. It sits solidly at about 25 Googles a week. but it does spike every once in a while. And that's a good start. I'm not totally opposed to formularies. If I'm pretending that I didn't already have my heart set on doing Cobra with you guys, I might consider this one because it is solid. It does get 25-ish to 50, but I flounder on what I can say about formularies that isn't specific to the definition of what a formulary is or what might be included on a formulary that might not change from year to year, right? So again, I won't eliminate this completely. This might be something I choose to write about later, but it's not my number one pick. So let's head over to another one, HMO versus PPO. We can see that it ebbs and flows. And FYI, if this weren't a screenshot, if this was real life, you could drag your mouse cursor over the lines and have more exact dates appearing. So like that, and that little thing here, you could hold it. My mouse was held over that little dot there. I don't know if you can see that little dot, and it would tell you how many were Googled in that particular week, right? So as you can see, there doesn't seem to be any particular pattern I could come up with for a specific week or a time frame each year with this high of a search rate. So again, same thing as formularies. I wouldn't necessarily straight out eliminate this topic, but keep it in mind that it seems to be, at least to me, I'm not a data analyst, but to me, this seems like a kind of high risk, high reward topic. If I sat down and said, all right, this is my one educational piece, I'm going to give myself a half hour to whip it up really quick, I might not choose this as my first one unless I have something really specific or really important to say about HMOs versus PPOs. Again, I wouldn't take it completely out of mind, but I might not use this as my first piece. And then one more before we get to Cobra. Let's take a look at the Medicaid unwinding. And as you can guess, very little Googling for years and years. And then all of a sudden, bam, lots and lots of interest in the unwinding. So good for those of us who've already had something started in the marketing realm on their social media. So if you already have a built presence there, this is a great topic to talk about, right? But like I said, I wouldn't start with this. A year from now, when the unwinding is done, not many people are going to want to look at this material. But for more seasoned marketers, this might be a good idea. And the other thing I thought was kind of cool is that Google can predict, or at least tries to predict, how it will do in the future, how the topic. So you can see this dotted line here. That is where Google is going to try to like predict how this topic is going to do over time. And I thought that was really interesting because it seems to know that the unwinding is going to only last a certain period of time. Because as you can see, it's by the end of the year, it's dropping off significantly. So, and I thought that was interesting. And I kind of tend to agree with Google on this one. So I'm like, I love that when I think that Google's doing something right and I agree with it. So I'm like, I wonder what else it knows or what else is going to predict correctly for me. Can trust Google, right? Anyway, so let's just take a look at the topic that we are going to pick for today. So Cobra. Unfortunately, this was a little difficult to get this graph to actually reflect Cobra insurance because, and I'm not joking, when I first Googled this and tried this, it came up a lot of Cobra Kai, which is unfortunately not going to be appearing in this webinar. So, to filter out some of that Cobra Kai stuff, I did type in Cobra health insurance, not just Cobra. So anyway, out of the three topics, I randomly decided to throw into this Google Trends feature. I would choose this one as my first go around with an educational social media marketing piece. It's Googled steadily, averaging around 50 searches a week, never hit zero. And it makes it a topic that will keep on giving you results over time, unlike something like the unwinding. So there is a tracking feature you can look at if you have this information organized a little differently. Cobra tracks 18th out of 50 of the most searched insurance topics in Michigan, in case you were curious. So if you are an agent that does all your business in Michigan, it is a fairly high Googled insurance trend word. And a lot of and it sounds kind of low, don't get me wrong, but this number also factors in a lot of like carrier brand names. And you're not, at least to me, I would just use the marketing material that carrier creates already and beg, borrow, steal from them and not recreate the wheel. and not waste your time doing that, and instead picking things that you can write about yourself, right? So while COBRA does that, 18 doesn't sound super high to me, it's a lot higher than you would think if you're eliminating all of those carrier names as something that's Googled. All right. So a great place to pause for a moment and check to see if there's any questions. If you have any at this point, please throw them up in the chat, because we're going to take a kind of left turn here and start talking about the details surrounding the educational part of our educational content. So give me one moment, please, to just check that chat before we move on. Okay, it looks like we are all good in the question department, so I'm going to go ahead and keep it on if that's okay with you. So like I said, sharp turn here, but since we've now nailed down our topic, let's make sure we have the knowledge that we need to make a successful post about this before we go off writing all sorts of yellow journalism pieces over here, right? We don't want to be that guy. Let's do a review of COBRA first before we write that content. So what does it stand for? The Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1985. Technically the of 1895, sorry, 1985 needs to be on there because there's a couple different COBRAs, but this is usually the one everyone's talking about, right? So we're going to pivot for a few minutes, review some nitty gritty of COBRA. When you're going to write educational content, you want to be knowledgeable in the topic at hand. And if you're anything like me, then even if you are someone who educates the populace about COBRA from time to time, you still don't have every little minutia point memorized. You will lose all your credibility if you aren't careful, and you don't want to spend all this time and effort just to be wrong, right? If you're going to market yourself as an expert, be an expert. So COBRA gives employees and their dependents the right to extend group health coverage after certain life events. So brief history of COBRA, it was passed by Reagan in 1985, and this legislation was designed to help protect those who depended on group coverage for their health insurance and would have little options outside of their employment to get coverage if the group were to no longer offer it to them. The biggest push came from the Older Women's League due to the high amount of women and children who were immediately losing coverage previous to COBRA because of the divorce or the death of their spouse. I thought that was interesting. A little bit of my history teacher self coming out here. So who qualifies for COBRA and how do you go about getting it? So these events trigger COBRA rights. So termination of employment, reduction in employment hours, Medicare qualification status, divorce or legal separation, the death of the employee, or the loss of dependent status. So if any one of these life events occurs to someone who is in a group contract, or it has group health care coverage, I should say, this is where COBRA can potentially come into play. So when does COBRA apply? It's an easy formula to determine when COBRA applies. COBRA only applies if the employer has more than 20 employees within the calendar year, regardless of the employee's status, full-time, part-time, doesn't matter, and offers health coverage in the first place. So if one of these elements is untrue, then COBRA doesn't apply. So the employer must have 20 employees and the employer must offer health coverage. It doesn't have to magically start offering health coverage if it didn't already, and it does not have to do this if there is not more than 20 employees. So COBRA can how long someone can stay on COBRA is determined by what reason that person wound up on COBRA in the first place. If they found themselves on COBRA due to a termination of employment or a reduction in work hours, they can stay on COBRA for up to 18 months. If any other life event occurs aside from those two, since hopefully you won't get fired from the same place twice, then coverage can be extended to a maximum of 36 months. If the beneficiary or a dependent of that beneficiary has any sort of special need, this automatically bumps the total amount of time COBRA can last to 36 months, regardless of how COBRA was triggered in the first place. All of the other qualifying events land you with that 36 months of coverage. So coverage is not capped at coverage is capped, at 36 months, and COBRA cannot be extended longer than 36 months, regardless of the reason that you got COBRA or if there is a special need or what have you. Okay, so I see a question in the chat. I'm going to hit that up before we head on to our next slide. Is it better to do actual posts, reels, or stories, or both? Jordan, excellent question. You are jumping ahead a little bit. I'll get there. That's later on. If I still don't answer that question by the end, let me know and I'll try again, okay? But I promise you there is stuff about reels. Oh, I'm so excited you asked. There will be stuff about reels in a moment. So Michaela, 36, and her special needs daughter, Anna, 4, have recently qualified for COBRA coverage due to a layoff. How long can they expect to stay on COBRA if they apply right when Michaela receives her COBRA? The answer is B. Okay, yes, originally Michaela would have gotten that 18 months of COBRA coverage if we had only known Michaela was laid off. If it was just Michaela and her daughter, then it would just be the 18 months due to that layoff. However, because Michaela's daughter has special needs and she is a dependent of Michaela, Michaela's daughter and Michaela would be able to get 36 months of COBRA because of that special need from that dependent. That extends the COBRA coverage for that 36 months. Okay. 54 months is too long. You cannot have COBRA for that long. 36 is the absolute cutoff no matter what. But that 36 months, that could be extended to 36 months right off the bat because Michaela's daughter has special needs. If she did not, then yes, the 18 months would be correct. That would be the normal amount of time that someone would get COBRA coverage. So don't be fooled by that special needs scenario with someone, with a dependent or with the beneficiary. Special needs kind of changes it up a little bit. So keep that in mind. All right, so let's keep on keeping on. So let's take a look at the life cycle of how COBRA might work from beginning to end using a example family. I tend to like real world examples. So meet Jackie and her family. You may or may not be familiar with Jackie from other insurability courses. Her and her family help me out with a lot of examples with my webinars and insurability courses. So they are reoccurring guests. So let's take a look at these family members here. So Jackie is 35, Marcus, her husband, is 33, and they have a 3-year-old son named Samuel. So Jackie was hired at a medium-sized company back in 2017. Her HR rep gave her a notice when she signed up for her health coverage about COBRA, right? So because it's a medium-sized company, we know that it's more than 20 employees. Excuse me. So we know that because of federal law, she will be qualifying for COBRA, right? She will be able to get COBRA, I should say, if she has one of those life events. So Jackie decides to take her employer's coverage and include her husband, Marcus, and her son, Samuel. Jackie's husband is self-employed. Keep that in mind for later. That's going to come up later. So her husband is self-employed, meaning that he probably does not have access to employer-sponsored health coverage. So their only access to group coverage is going to be through Jackie. Okay, that's going to come into play later. So keep that in mind. So Jackie probably received something like this from her employer. This is not the entire document. I just took a little screen grab of one I found, but this is what a COBRA notice might look like if it is if it is separated, sorry about that, from the summary plan description. Again, be sure that there is no contact information on this document and that the plan administrator is able to be contacted from this document. It must be, there must be some way to contact the benefits administrator for this notice to be compliant. So meanwhile, back to Jackie again. So this timeline kind of details the way that COBRA would probably shake out for the average person. Like we mentioned earlier, and like we learned in our knowledge check question, these can be a little different based on circumstance, but this is kind of like I tried to hit the most basic, most likely to occur situation. So of course, like we mentioned earlier, this is not the only way that someone might get COBRA. By old coverage, let's clarify that I mean the standard group coverage she had while she was an employee, and the new coverage would technically not change in a benefit plan sense. The benefit plan has to stay the same. Jackie and her crew can still expect the same level of coverage, but they will be considered COBRA covered, not group covered. So let's say Jackie gets laid off. She sent a notice in the mail within 14 days of her layoff that details how to sign up for COBRA, and all of the adult beneficiaries should have received a letter stating this information. So she should have gotten that letter, and her husband Marcus should have gotten a letter. I doubt they're going to send one to Sam. He's 3. He's not going to comprehend what's going on, right? So then after she gets that letter, she gets 60 days to enroll in COBRA if she so chooses. Then coverage will begin the day the old coverage was terminated. So the standard employer group coverage, and the new coverage would begin that day, that COBRA coverage, right? And that does matter, right? The term we use here for COBRA versus group coverage is going to matter, and we can see why in a moment. So here are all the major differences Jackie will notice when she signs up for COBRA. She is not over 65, so she might not notice one of the last ones on this list here, but let's just take a peek and make sure we understand the differences between the employer coverage and the COBRA coverage, right? So in group coverage, employers generally contribute an amount to the premium, and in COBRA coverage, employers generally do not contribute anything to the premium, and sometimes will even charge an administration fee. I believe it's 2%, to administer that coverage to the person. So that's kind of why a lot of people see COBRA coverage as more expensive, because they are paying the entirety of their premium, not just the percentage that was left over after the employer contributes. Right? So technically it's not more expensive. It's just they weren't responsible for that portion of their premium before. So they're going to view it that way. Coverage generally ends when the employment ends for group coverage. But as we learned earlier, coverage usually extends for 18 months with a layoff that can be extended for other reasons if that person qualifies for those life events. Loss of active group coverage grants a special enrollment period for both Medicare and individual and family coverage. So if someone has group coverage and qualifies for Medicare, that's a special enrollment period. And if that person leaves group coverage and wants to then apply for individual or family coverage on the marketplace or off marketplace, that would be considered a special enrollment period as well, losing that group coverage. However, COBRA coverage is considered inactive when it comes to Medicare. So when COBRA coverage ends, if that person wants to enroll in Medicare and it's not their 65th birthday, or they don't have any other special enrollment periods surrounding that date, they will not be able to sign up until they get to the open enrollment period, or what have you, right? That is considered inactive coverage. It does not grant you a special enrollment period to apply for Medicare. However, it does for individual and family. So when COBRA ends at that 18 or 36 months, it does grant a special enrollment period for the marketplace or off marketplace, individual and family coverage, I guess, right? So you would be able to get some new coverage there, but not for Medicare. I think that's everything that I wanted to cover on this slide. So let's stop and chat really quick for a second, kind of think about what we just learned. Based on the knowledge that we have gotten already and what we have reviewed with COBRA, what might you suggest that Jackie's next steps would be for her family as she applies for COBRA? So we don't know for sure exactly what the situation is. I kind of did that on purpose to kind of get some discussions going here. But someone mentioned how that loss of income might have qualified Samuel for CHIP, right? Good call, good call. So if I were their agent, that might be something I would recommend, right? I might say, hey, see if Samuel applies for CHIP now that you have that big loss of income, right? And then the other thought I had was that her husband is self-employed, so there's no ability for her to hop on any sort of employer coverage with the husband. But if she does, once she hopefully finds another job or gets brought back onto her company, they can stop using COBRA and hopefully go on to an employer coverage again. If not, hopefully they can grab some subsidies and hit up the marketplace. All right, so Jackie chooses to enroll in COBRA coverage. She is enrolled immediately for herself, son, and husband. Due to their loss in income for the layoff, Samuel now qualifies for CHIP. Sam is removed from COBRA. So let's say another special event happens. Jackie chooses to adopt her niece. that is considered a life event, a special life event, adopting a child. So that coverage is then extended for another 36 months. And thank God, Jackie finds a new job soon after the expansion of her, is granted. So she doesn't really need the expansion anymore. Jackie enrolls in her new employer coverage with her new daughter, her son, and her husband and herself, and that COBRA coverage ends. So that's like a fairy tale story. I'm hoping that happens with every person where they don't need coverage for COBRA very long because of how expensive it is. But that might be kind of, if we're going to hit all the different things that could potentially occur, this would be kind of a standard way that COBRA would work. Okay, so now that we've done some discussions and hit the educational portion of our show with COBRA, I'm going to check the chat, make sure there is no other questions before we start getting into the marketing portion of our show. All right, it looks like there is no question, so I'm going to keep on keeping on. So COBRA can apply, the reason we chose this topic is because COBRA can apply to all three markets. We chose this intentionally that way, correct? And we talked about earlier, that's okay if you don't choose something like that, but I wanted to do that to show you guys this today. So if you have been to any of our marketing webinars before, and if you haven't, go check them out. Let's do a quick recap for those of us who haven't. We at Action recommend getting the most bang for your buck possible when with social media content by creating content that can be cross-posted over more than one platform. Your business website should be the home base to store that content. I mean, you want to drive your consumers back to your website, right? You can mention it on Facebook, mention it on Instagram, mention wherever. I suggest linking it to your original website again, not just copy and pasting it onto Facebook, because the whole point is to drive your consumer back to your website, right? Don't give them an opportunity to miss what you're about, right? So why these particular things? We choose these content types at Action because they generally are the easiest to create. We also suppose that we want to generate 4 types of content, right? So this is, if it were me, this is what I'd be trying to hit. A blog for my website, a YouTube video, a social media post for Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, what have you, and perhaps a longer form advertorial or article that might be published in either digital print or digital media. I'd lean way more towards digital media for the purposes of what we're doing here. Your own strategy can vary, but we've selected these types of media because they have a fairly low barrier of entry, and they help us take advantage of cross-posting and recycling content across platforms and media to maximize the digital ecosystem that we're trying to create, right? Because especially if you're new to this, you're trying to create a baseline of stuff for people to go look at. There are many different ways you might organize that system, but we're going to spend time outlining some of the most common ways you might ease the access for your consumer to get to these channels. And we're going to do so under the assumption that you've chosen to place your blog at the direct center of your effort and of your website, because again, you're trying to drive traffic to that website. Blogs can tend to feel a little like long and scary and big. So you're going to want to be targeting when you look at these 4 types. And we're going to talk about that in a moment here. So COBRA and group first. Let's churn out that content. Let's make some expertise content. We're going to start with group, and you'll see why in a minute. So the first thing I tend to do when I'm trying to market something is I think about the pain points as to why someone would want to read my content. I list out some of the pain points that COBRA would have for group. So for group, the biggest pain points in COBRA are probably going to be compliance issues, right? They might be during the onboarding process. Am I being compliant when I'm giving the documentation to my new employees at employee termination? Am I remembering to get that letter out in that 14 days? While COBRA is active for that person, am I right by charging this administration fee, or is that wrong? And if when COBRA needs to be terminated for that employee, like, okay, how do I go about doing that and making sure I'm not breaking any laws, right? These topics can all be written about together in a long form article or broken up into smaller subtopics if you wanted to do maybe like a TikTok or a reel for instance, because those are shorter form. You're probably not going to be able to hit all 4 of those in one reel, in one TikTok. So because for the purpose of this webinar, we're going to start with group, because that's the market that's going to be the hardest to find overlaps with the other 2 markets in comparison to the overlaps between Medicare and under 65. Again, you don't have to find any overlap at all if that's not what you want to do, but that's what we're doing today. So once again, this slide is going to seem familiar to some of us who have looked at our marketing webinars before, but that's because the strategy works. So let's pick one of these pain points to hone in on and list some of the details of that pain point and create a blog post about it. Blog post for group. You'll see why in a second. This way we can use that blog post as an outline for the rest of the content we're going to make. I like to start with the most complicated, most effort needing content first, and then working my way outward. So that way I can constantly head back to that one post I put the most effort into, and then draw more things from that one post, right? So just for the sake of ease, let's check out that bottom event here, just because. So we're going to check while COBRA is active and another qualifying event occurs for that person. So since these are longer form blogs, you might want to choose a broader topic within the COBRA realm, then break down that broader topic. You're going to want to strike a balance between informative and digestible. Sure, you might want to, you might know everything about COBRA, and you might want to stretch your stuff and tell everyone you know everything about COBRA, but nobody's going to know about that if you don't make it digestible, marketable, and easy to find. So keep in mind that why someone might want to read an article about COBRA in the first place. Not many people get bored early in the evening and start wondering, I wonder if COBRA pays prior to Medicare and why that decision was made, to Google. I'm a nerd, I do that all the time, but most people don't, right? So usually it's going to go something a little more like this. The person's going to be in their office, the person giving out that COBRA letter, worried that the person's going to look for COBRA and be like, they're going to sit down through that, like, how does COBRA work? Enter. Or how to stay out of trouble with my employees with COBRA coverage, and then take it from there, right? That's more our speed. So target your article to be something that will solve a problem for your clients that they're going to be Googling. Something like the example on the side here. Why is COBRA coverage, or what is COBRA coverage? I'm sorry, and what do employers need to know? To me, that title's still a bit too broad and a bit too long, but it's fine. The only problem I have with this is that 7-minute read right there. See that? Ew, who wants to read something about COBRA for 7 minutes, especially COBRA? Right. So if you're writing your blog, make sure you have every part of the answer included within the blog, and that it's going to be in a digestible size. Sometimes when it's a more complex topic like this, I will write out the answers I want to provide to my audience somewhere else, and then cross them off like a list as I go. And then that way I know I've answered all the questions that I'd like to answer, so that way they're Googleable, right? And once that bad boy is complete, add it onto your website. The hardest part is now done, right? Writing the blog part is the hardest part. If you take a look at all of our action insights, they tend to be about 2-minute reads. That's where you're going for, not 7. Okay. So now as part of yours, that article, and I'm proud of you too for writing that article. That's hard. It is. Nobody's going to stumble upon it unless you advertise for it, right? So jump onto LinkedIn, summarize your article in a way that interests the reader in a couple of sentences, get an interesting picture. Don't steal a picture. Get your own. Crime doesn't pay. And post it. This will draw attention from business people looking for answers. Like I said, for this blog, I told you there was a reason why we were hitting group with the blog first. And that's because you're going to get more of a business person style audience if you're posting to LinkedIn. And you are going to get that more business style audience in a longer form article in comparison to a Facebook post, right? Not many businesses hop on Facebook looking for answers to stuff, right? They're going to be looking for a more formal channel to get that answer. Okay. So here's how COBRA would matter to individual and Medicare. So we've got our COBRA one, our group one all set. Let's try this again. Same concept, but let's do this with COBRA. So we have our bigger piece first. We have as much stuff answered as we wanted in our first one, our article. Let's hop into more casual, shorter, even more easily digestible content, right? So you can Cobra in a vlog, right? So if I were to do individual or Medicare, I would transition into something that is a little easier to digest, like a YouTube video. So I chose the vlog this time because those who are looking for for information for Medicare are more likely to go to someplace like YouTube or Facebook to get this information, not so much LinkedIn. I use my dad as an example because he's someone who's about to qualify for Medicare next year. When my dad has a question, he does not go to LinkedIn. He does not go to Facebook. He Googles it or he goes to YouTube, right? And so that's our target audience. Let's meet them where they're at. Make a Medicare video about that topic, right? Easy. And again, this material is going to be easy to digest in smaller chunks and chop up to put on other platforms like Reels or YouTube. I really like the idea of making something big and then narrowing it down. Make a big YouTube video, narrow it down to smaller pieces. Prop your phone up onto something, use your laptop, do whatever you need to do, record yourself talking about the ways that Cobra interacts with Medicare. You can do a script word for word. I've done that before, or you can just pull up bullet points from earlier and make sure you hit them all, kind of like what I'm doing right now. Whatever you do, just read, don't sit there and read the article you just wrote word for word and post that to YouTube. Nobody wants that. I'm sure you're a great storyteller and you're a great reader, but nobody wants to listen to that. If you don't want to be on camera, then just record your voice and use pictures or PowerPoint slides. And if you go and actually watch this video example that I have here, the gentleman does both. He talks to the camera at one point and then voices over other points. So then once that's done, just like last time, throw that link up onto another social media platform. For Medicare, I usually would choose Facebook because while my dad's not a Facebook person, I know there are many people within that new senior generation who are on Facebook, and that is most likely going to hit the attention of your target audience. Again, in comparison to something like LinkedIn or Instagram, since LinkedIn is not going to have that high of a senior audience. And if they are, they're still working, right? They're going to be probably exercising their group coverage still. And then you don't want to be hitting younger generation with Medicare for the most part anyway, right? So then finally, we're going to head into that individual idea. So individuals need coverage too. This one is going to be a little different. Now, believe it or not, I did purposefully suggest platforms in each area here. Like I said, for Facebook group, it's going to have that formal setting we were looking for. Medicare, I think, would do best on Facebook or YouTube. And while you're more than welcome to rinse and repeat and put everything everywhere, I would like to introduce you to TikTok for the individual side, right? So if you don't know what TikTok is, it's similar to YouTube app for watching video content, but they're more limited length videos. This is great for creating bite-sized content for learning or short tutorials on how to do something. One of my favorite TikTokers does this series called Powerful Websites You Should Know About. I love this guy. He'll tell me about powerful websites I should know about that. They're all random. They're all over the place. But if it were me, I would do something like this for healthcare for myself if I were an agent and tweak each video each way. So if it were me, I would use, I'm going to plug something of ours. Sorry, but not sorry also. I would use my Coverage for One PURL and create a short tutorial on how to use this this platform on the client side, and then show using my personal link to shop for coverage. And then I'd film it a couple of different times, slightly differently, depending on different topics of healthcare, right? So for our purposes for Cobra, I might start off the video by saying, losing Cobra soon, do you need to shop for some coverage? Here's an easy way to get started. And then hop into my tutorial. And then I film another one a couple weeks from now and say, hey, are you turning 26 and need some coverage? Here's an easy way to shop. And then not even refilm that part of me doing Coverage for One stuff. Don't need to. It's the same process. And then you can just keep tweaking that beginning portion and re-uploading them with different hashtags. Hashtag Cobra for a Cobra One, right? Hashtag turning 26, whatever, and then keep recycling it. Get more bang for your buck. Why not? So now you're not only hitting up multiple platforms, you're targeting that younger audience, and you are able to tailor the content as quickly and as easily as I can think of to hit as many different ways that someone's going to search for to solve their problem as humanly possible. Cool? And then again, promote, promote, promote. The other cool thing about TikTok is that there's many social platforms like Facebook. It used to be called Twitter, but now it's called X for some reason. And Instagram all kind of have their own version of TikTok. It's called Reels. And I think it's called Reels on Instagram too. I'm not the biggest Instagram person personally. As you can see, because I didn't really recommend it. I didn't want to recommend something I don't know a ton about. But if you're an Instagram person, go for it. So these can be plastered on multiple, right? You can make it a TikTok, then you can download it again, put it on Facebook, download again, put it wherever, right? And then you're again getting multiple bang for your buck. And then same thing with that YouTube video, chop it up into smaller pieces if it works. Throw it on Facebook, throw it on Instagram, throw it on TikTok. You just got yourself 4 different ways to use that same YouTube video. A little bit of work to make that YouTube video in the front end, not a lot of work on the back end to make that available for multiple places and to multiple audiences. Work smarter, not harder. Here's another way to do it on Twitter. Twitter, I don't know how Twitter is going to end up doing overall, but you could put your PURL onto your Twitter page to get people started there. Okay. So what other topics might work? I'm just going to tell you because we have 4 minutes left and I don't want to, I always end up talking more than I think I'm going to. So some topics I might hit up after Cobra might be formularies. Okay, so now that we have a bigger piece, do something a little smaller, a little quicker, formularies. Metal tiers is a big one. I think that would be a really good one to do as well, because again, applies to all 3 markets. A lot of the laymen, the most average people don't understand metal tiers. My sister works in, doesn't work in health insurance. I end up having to explain to her why the silver plan is what all the time, right? But go back to the list I made. I don't care. Steal it. And then if you are still like totally overwhelmed by this process and you don't want to write all this stuff, that's okay. You can dip your toe in instead of taking the plunge by stealing some of our consumer facing content from our websites that yours truly, and our friend Randy, if you remember him, my work partner, make, right? So I did say earlier, crime doesn't pay, but in this situation, it totally does. Because I told you could take it. It's not stealing. I promise. This time it's not crime. It's just borrowing. You can thank me later. So to steal our blog posts, head over to our website, actionbenefits.com, click on the insights portion. And then once you get to the insights page, this is the insights page, you would click on that little filter by tag and go to the consumer portion of our articles. Do this because the content we write is designed for you guys just as much as it is designed for the consumer. I wouldn't steal our agent-centered content per se, because it's not going to jive with the audience you're looking to gather, right? It's gonna go over their head. I would stick with the ones that we've tagged for consumer content. And then go ahead and click through them, pick one you'd like, and you can copy the link at the top, post it to Facebook, or take it, just take it as it is. Steal our LinkedIn stuff too. To steal LinkedIn stuff, stupid easy. Just click repost. Literally just look at this is the one, some of you, this might have been what drawn you to this event, is my post about, look at that. Look at how nice. So then go ahead and hit just repost down there. It will ask you to either repost with your thoughts, and then you can type something, give yourself a little bit of time to throw your own personal spin on it, throw in your own expertise, or just post it as is if you don't have time for all that. I would suggest if you have something to say and it's intelligent, say it so that you can have a little bit of say and they're not just seeing what we wrote, you can get your little bit of spin on it too. So these are great options to get started if you're not someone looking to write all this stuff here. But I do recommend eventually getting your face out there, yourself out there. This is your business, you know? I like to see a person. So to wrap it up, today we learned how to choose social media topics, how to describe the rules surrounding COBRA and how they affect both employers and employees, how to create social media posts that are easily tweaked to reach multiple markets, and how to identify ways to cross-promote social media content to best cover the targeted audience. And we did it with 1 minute to spare. I did it. Oh, I love when that happens. Okay, so questions. Come at me with them. Hopefully, Jordan, I answered your questions about Reels. I did try to remember to hit on that for you. If there's any other questions, is it better to do actual posts, Reels, or stories? Jordan, I think that's going to depend on what your goal is and what your goal is and what topic you're hitting and who you're trying to hit. I don't have it memorized. I'm sorry, which markets you work with, but if you're looking to hit up like individuals, I would say the Reels and stories might be a good idea. And I also think, now that I'm thinking more about your question, I think it depends on how you're choosing to advertise, right? If you are choosing to, if you're looking for more of like that personal and community marketing that we talked about slides and slides ago, I might do more of the Reels and the stories, because you're trying to get that personal connection, right? I find those work, right? I find those work really well. If you're doing that, if you're just doing a post, if you're doing strictly educational, I think a post might be better, because you're more likely to get, to come off as that like educational, logos, if we're going back to, my English teaching days, that logos that I have a, knowledge base in this market. It gives you more of that like knowledge base type of air to it in comparison to a reel or a story. But if you're trying to market you as a person, and say, hey, I'm a good guy, you should come check out my business, Reels and stories might be a better option. I'm always a big fan of doing all, like hitting up and recycling, making your content work in as many ways as you can. And if you need help with that, tell me about it and I'll come help you. This is what I like to talk about. This is what I like. So hit me up and I'll help you out. Hit me up with any other questions you might have. You have my email address if you think of anything else later. Keep in mind, Randy's here too. You can ask him stuff. He loves to talk to you guys as well. And unless you have any other questions, I am all set. I'm so glad you spent time with me, helping yourself and helping your business. Or if you have any other questions, you have your account managers as well, you can contact. So have a great rest of your day, and you're welcome. Thanks for spending time with me.